sustainability doesn't need to be expensive. There is the initial investment of coming up with a solution. But ultimately, we also need to sort of think, is this product going to sort of survive the test of time? How to sustain a community, the social sustainability, how to sustain the economy of that community. That is also critical. Sustainability doesn't need to be expensive. We don't need to spend extra money to be sustainable. Far from it. Not thinking sustainably, not bringing sustainability into the equation is actually more expensive.
In a world increasingly facing the challenges of climate change, with the Building Green podcast, we will dive deep into the intersection of architecture, design, urbanism, and environmental responsibility. I'm Ladina Schipp, your host. I've been an architect and building site manager for the past 10 years. During my studies at ETH in Switzerland, as well as in my working environment, I've had many touchpoints with sustainability, like many of you, I guess. I've also learned to question what I've been told, which is why I decided to go deeper into the topic and uncover what sustainability actually means. My mission is to highlight the transformative power of sustainable architecture, not just as a practice, but as a catalyst for broader societal change. Subscribe for more of our content and enjoy the show. So Kourosh Salehi, it's a pleasure to have you here today. You're the design director in the region MENA for LWKP. You're currently in Dubai, or you're based in Dubai. Can you share your journey towards becoming the design director at LWK Partners?
Thank you for having me. The journey has taken 37 years or so. It's been a long journey since I first started practicing as an architect. I'm sure you don't want to know all of that. Like most architects, I started my work investigating form and design and human application. I learned my trade, again, like most architects, by sort of being engaged at various levels with buildings and also with the debate. As an academic, being involved with research, working with institutions, etc., not only to sort of really to pursue a personal growth, but also to investigate the means of providing solutions that are more applicable, because design is not static, and then nor should the design thinking be. As human beings, we have basic requirements with regards to shelter and built environment, but that built environment evolves as we do, as cities, like machines, become more and more complex and layered, and their occupants cannot be sort of a single sort of source of identity or a source of ethnicity, one sort of mindset. As the diversity within cities increase, the built environment would also need to respond. So for that reason, as architects, at least myself, I don't speak on behalf of every architect, I think staying in touch, staying updated, and trying to sort of pursue, like I said, the condition of us as a species is fundamental to the solutions we provide. Yeah, so that's a little bit about how I personally go around sort of working with my trade. LWK is a Hong Kong-based origins company. It's been around for 35 years or so, predominantly in China, in Asia, but also in Southeast Asia and parts of Europe, and in the past 6 years now in the Middle East.
And I've seen you talk about contextual metabolism before. How does the concept of contextual metabolism influence the design process at LWK Partners? And as you know, you're my first guest from Dubai, so I'm particularly interested in the diverse cultural and environmental landscapes of Asia and the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, Asia is a vast continent, and Middle East is a smaller portion. I mean, Middle East itself is also extremely complex, historically diverse, and challenging and rewarding at the same time. So just keeping those two elements, or sort of those two sort of identities slightly apart. With regards to contextual metabolism, it's a term that I've personally been promoting because when I first came to the region, which was about 14, 15 years ago, and I'm not saying this is how it was, but this was my experience working with major sort of international companies, that I felt there was a gap. The speed of construction was such that there was almost no time for debate. There was no time for a considered approach, particularly to the city as an environment. Buildings were treated, against my perception, as objects that were just extruded independently of the impact that they made to the immediate surrounding, i.e., the context of a city or a place was not being thoroughly integrated into the design. That severely alarmed me. I was at the time leading another design group, and then I sort of had to sort of bring in or try to sort of engage not only my own colleagues and team, but also clients, and trying to sort of really promote this idea that cities are part of a palette, a canvas that we occupy, and our trade sort of relies on it. Therefore, it shouldn't be ignored or discounted or miscounted as the just a casual backdrop to a form, i.e., form-driven, or the dreadful term sort of iconic design, iconic architecture kept coming up. And again, like I said, I found that disturbing, because every developer, every city, every country wanted to sort of beat each other in some sort of iconoclastic race. And that sort of was becoming banal, where architects were just in pursuit of the next commission, were falling into that trap. So rather than leading the design narrative and process, they were following it. Again, not everybody. I'm not generalizing. There were many others who, and I myself, tried to sort of bringing a different side to design, etc. So the contextual metabolism is something that, again, I've been pursuing and promoting, that says the life of a city, if you just imagine the metabolic sort of health of a city, relies on many factors. And the context, i.e. the climatic, the cultural, the economic aspect of the city all go to inform the pursuit of a design, a building, etc. So it's, again, without going too much into the technicalities of it, it's about engaging with the context, predominantly working with the end user and taking the stakeholders and the citizens and the communities that we build in very much into consideration and identifying with that human scale at every level, emotional, cultural, and well-being.
It's interesting that you mentioned the topic, because I have the feeling in our region, or in Switzerland at least, there couldn't be anything that you think through more. Like, we think about all the contextual aspects of every little detail, which then slows down the building process so much that we're not growing, which also has its advantages.
Absolutely. That's the other side of the coin. I mean, I practiced in London for as an architect for over 2 decades. And one of the reasons that I found it, again, extremely challenging, things have changed over the last 15 years or so. Things have changed, particularly in London. But at the time, overregulation was stifling growth. So a city which is so dynamic, so economically fundamental to the UK and its European neighbours, was being hampered with overregulation. You see, being considerate about the environment and context is very different about being bureaucratically obsessed with regulations which often are subjective interpretations of individuals. So I think that there's a bigger debate. I'm not sure if it fits within this sort of particular platform, but there's a bigger debate about sort of how we govern the design process. Again, I'm not one of those architects or designers that think that we know best. Far from it. The egos of an over-enthusiastic designer needs curtailing like anything. And I've been slightly controversial or try not to be too controversial. So that needs sort of an element of sort of engagement and control. But nevertheless, it becomes so much that, like I said, the regulations are being applied not for the real betterment of that holistic approach to design, which we just explained, which is to do with the economy, which is to do with the well-being of a city, which is to do with the growth, which is to do with the actual longevity of life and sustaining of a community. All of that complex sort of debate needs to be part of a development. But if you then just purely focus on one or two narrow aspects of that and ignore that debate, like I said, in a very sort of tick-boxy bureaucratic way, then commerce suffers, development suffers, investment in human resources suffers, etc., etc. So I think that there is a very, very fine balance that we need to be aware of first, and then be sort of persistent in trying to sort of resolve it and approach it in that way.
So do you think the lack of contextual understanding or consciousness is due to missing education or missing regulations compared to Europe, let's say?
Again, Europe is a vast, also very complex and vast continent. I wouldn't generalize like that, if you allow me. I think awareness is significant. I think, we often talk about engagement of stakeholders, which I also do myself. But I think on complex issues, stakeholders also need to invest in their own time to really appreciate the problem that they're dealing with. And it's not some sort of primitive democracy where, sort of narrow interest groups can then influence, the well-being of a whole community. And so I think that, I would say reasonableness and balance is significant in trying to sort of bring about an approach to, particularly with planning of cities, that is complex and it needs to be handled carefully. That's all I say. I think that I don't want to be sort of too jingoistic and oversimplify something which sort of needs careful attention.
So back to your projects, reflecting on the design process, could you walk me through a specific project where the contextual metabolism played a pivotal role?
It's not easy in the sense that working with groups, clients, government, as we do, they clearly have their own agenda for development. They have their own constraints of time, place. But I think the essence of sort of creating that awareness that, like I said, context matters, or it's not, development should not be about an Excel sheet that says, well, I've got these milestones to hit, which is about achieving a certain building, and I want to distinguish between building and architecture, and this is the budget, and that's the timeline, and these are the quantities. Well, go ahead, Mr. Architect, get on with it. I think you accept those as your constraints, but then in most cases, what we try to do is to then engage with the clients to say, how can we help? By the way, have you seen this problem? Or wouldn't you like to resolve that issue? For instance, I will tell you one master planning project that we had a couple of years ago, that there was a body of water and there were agricultural runoffs. The water was highly contaminated, but it is a large lake. And the brief was, well, get somebody to clean up that lake and put some nice buildings and a community around here, because it could be nice. But we began to sort of investigate a number of issues. We felt because the lake was contaminated, the biodiversity regarding both plant and bird species had been decimated. and we needed to sort of see if there are ways that we could introduce those. Now, introducing that sort of wetland ecology to the lake then required to actually sort of designate in certain parts, which is sort of would deal with that, would allow the natural ecology to grow without being disturbed by human activity. That took a bit of convincing, for instance. The other aspect was that we felt that there was this small town on the edge of the site where the clients wanted to create a vibrant community. But, vibrant communities don't come around because you just put a few villas there. They need employment. You need a critical mass, first of all. Then you need employment. You need education. You need a sense of sort of communal well-being. And you need a sense of sort of communal pride in your place to keep your young people from sort of traveling to cities. So there is a whole range of other debates and elements. This is why, as urbanists, we need to sort of look into the anthropology as a science, if you like, that sort of investigates, the aspects of social considerations that communities have. What are the drivers? What concerns them, and what are the solutions that the built environment can bring that alleviate some of their sort of concerns. So in that sense, we looked at employment, we looked at education. We found that girls were highly educated, but there was no employment for them. So we sort of, again, there were olive farms there. We sort of said, what about, rather than just treating the olive farm as a farming exercise, what if that became an investment, an investigation into the producers, almost a scientific one, that this could, the olives could bring in terms of, cosmetics, but investigation in the science of the health aspects, etc. So we propose that a sort of almost a small academy or a laboratory could be on site, where not only people sort of work there to investigate, but also they could sort of create other sort of support small businesses in producing sort of products that the tourists or the visitors could buy, etc. So working again at a number of different levels, and each time you sort of propose these, first you see people that they bristle up and they're not sure how to handle it. They think, or they thought, that they came to the table wanting a construction site going, and then here's on the other side of the table there's a consultant that is sort of, if anything, presenting them with problems. That's one way of perceiving it. But the other side of it, and this is the side that I like to promote, is that we actually providing solutions. The problems are there. We didn't create them. Unemployment is there. Young people don't want to stay in small towns. There is contamination everywhere. The natural environment is being neglected. These problems are there. But by just highlighting them, I don't like to sort of be prophet of doom and just say, well, that doesn't work, but this doesn't work. Yes, but how could it work? And how could it be integrated in a more sensitive and sensible approach. That's why I try to sort of distinguish between buildings, architecture, built environment, etc., because they're all components of the metabolism that we discussed earlier.
A few of you might know that I recently opened my own architecture studio, and I just started with the podcast. I'm very excited to build a platform where I connect with inspiring people to learn along the way and share these learnings with you. So if any little thing has inspired you, or if you learned anything new, I'd appreciate if you could rate the show or share my content on social media, Spotify or YouTube or wherever you listen to it. And if you think there are any touch points between you and me, I'd be super happy to connect with you. Feel free to reach out on any platform. Are the decisions of these big stakeholders mainly driven by financial factors, or do you see a switch there compared to 10, 20 years ago towards really wanting to be more sustainable, or is the financial aspect still the main decision maker?
Finance or economy is a fundamental aspect that we cannot run away from. How a project is funded and how much it costs to build is inescapable. Having said that, I don't sort of separate sustainability from that debate. Sustainability doesn't need to be expensive, and this is something that we need to be careful. Sustainability didn't come around as a sort of a regulation or a buzzword. It's been around between 20 to 30 maximum years. It became into real extensive legislation less than 30 years ago. But sustainability has been with us since the beginning of time. Let's not forget, sustainability means common sense. The caveman realized that he had or she had a certain means of keeping the family safe. They had certain means of protection, and they needed to make do with the constraints and yet provide the best solutions to shelter and protect themselves. Moving on, if you go to any other sort of societies that are rural society communities, all the decisions they make almost intuitively is to do with sustainability, and the economy of means and the economy of the process is absolutely fundamental to their decisions. So sustainability is nothing new. Sustainability doesn't need to be expensive. We don't need to spend extra money to be sustainable. Far from it. There is the initial investment of coming up with a solution. But ultimately, we also need to sort of think, is this product going to sort of survive the test of time? Will it be, the recent examples of when things are not well considered are the ghost towns in China, where buildings were piled up. A simple plan at ground level was extruded up. You've probably seen them. And then those large sort of towers were then copy-paste and clustered around. So they had buildings. And then they said to people, go live there. Nobody went. Because fundamentally there was a soul that these places need, which was missing. That there was no thinking. So effectively, all that investment into doing something which they felt was, the most economical way of doing, actually resulted in affecting the construction industry and the economy of a whole nation. So not thinking sustainably, not bringing sustainability into the equation is actually more expensive, you see. And again, sustainability it's not just about how do I mean, it's very important. I mean, the carbon emissions and use of your natural resources are absolutely critical. But there is a sort of the other aspects of sustainability, how to sustain a community, the social sustainability, how to sustain the economy of that community. That is also critical. So therefore, in terms of planning for what after the builds, the bricks and mortar are piled on top of each other, what happens afterwards? That is also fundamental to the debate. And it can't be monetized, although the economy is also very important.
That's again going back into separating the building from the architecture, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think buildings are construction.
Yeah. So you showed me before your nice background is from the city of Mecca. Could you go there deeper into the topic? How are you dealing with sustainable architecture, which is actually sustaining what is there, and versus more regenerative architecture?
What you see is behind me. I don't know if you can see it. It's the great Islamic library of Mecca. This was part of a large master plan surrounding the sort of Kaaba, the sort of most holy place for Muslims. The master plan was fundamentally about redevelopment around the sort of Kaaba within the city of Mecca. And it was challenging. It's challenging because it has a very varied topography. It's actually surrounded by mountains, and there's a reason why for over a millennia that land hasn't been developed, because it's very expensive and it's has other challenges. And as you know, there are certain times of the year during the Hajj period, up to 10 million people can embark in a time space of about a week, 10 days, up to about 10 million people from around the world sort of come to what is a very, very small sort of space, city space, urban space. And it has huge challenges in keeping those people secure, in keeping them sort of well-fed, directing them towards the rituals that they need to experience, etc. So the urban design challenges and the infrastructure required for that level of sort of complexity was huge, and we were tackling those aspects of it. But the way to do it, again, we started, we couldn't think about 10 million people, but we thought about a single pilgrim. And we felt a pilgrim that may not be very wealthy, and most of them aren't. They have saved all their lives for this journey of a lifetime. And they're there to experience a spiritual journey. How can that be facilitated? How can the safety, the ease of movement, the and access to the various pilgrimage sites can be secured, but also the spiritual aspect of their journey can be enhanced. So we started from that very single, again, human scale perspective, because when you think about Kaaba itself, it is a singular building. So we started very much from that perspective, that there is a very holy building site, and there is an individual that needs and wants to have that ritual. How do we help that process? Now, you could multiply that by many millions and then see where the equation becomes more and more complex. But yeah, I mean, that was part of what we did. Again, the document is thick and it's very multi-layered. I won't go through all of it. But in terms of the subject of this talk, how do we approach sustainability? Again, we did it on the basis, like I said before, in terms of how it could fit in within the reasonableness, the common sense, but the duty of care that we have as curators of this canvas. How we compose a harmony that can resonate at different levels and yet sort of be pleasant, be appropriate, be safe, etc.
It's interesting. And regarding the built environment or the way you build in Dubai, is there a lot to be sustained? Is there a movement towards sustaining the old part of Dubai? Because there's a super fast pacing construction, right?
There is. Dubai is obviously very interesting. Its success as a city has been held globally. Many cities are trying to emulate it. But its success in the speed of construction has had setbacks as well. There have been mistakes made in the process. And Dubai sort of fathers and the visionaries are trying very hard to alleviate some of those early bad decisions. Some were made by bad engineering, bad planning. But at the same time, they're also trying to provide a vision of the future that is a lot more people-focused. We have huge challenges. Our climate is pleasant most of the year, but there are a few months of the year where the harsh sort of heat can be oppressive and can hamper human activity. Therefore, promoting sort of things like public realm engagement, walking, cycling is tough. But believe it or not, we are tackling it. We are sort of providing solutions whereby providing passive means of cooling, a passive means of improving the climatic conditions, we could extend the outdoor seasons for the population. Dubai is trying hard to sort of create a sort of a realm or a perception where people can be persuaded to come out of their cars. There is a huge love affair with their cars. So they come out of the bubble of the car and engage more with the city at the pedestrian level. There is sustainability as a sort of a BREEAM or LEED classification is very strong. It's being implemented. environmental sustainability is extremely strong. In fact, Abu Dhabi, I mean, people talk about Dubai, but don't forget Dubai is a city within the Emirates or United Arab Emirates. And Abu Dhabi is doing some magnificent work around the environment, what they're doing with the mangroves, in terms of reintroducing species that have either lost or even some new species that they've seen the new wonderful sort of environmental conditions and bird life, particularly of sort of, these are, a lot of them are migratory birds, but they now come and see what, a lot of them tend to stay longer, sometimes even permanently. So there is vast awareness of what we need to do to really create a world that is less reliant on emission, but more concerned with the long-term well-being.
That's wonderful. And how do you see technological advancements shaping sustainable architecture in the next decades?
I think there is, in terms of choosing of materials, I mean, energy efficiency is implementing measures to reduce energy consumption. So through efficient building designs and employing correct materials and correct technology, we can sort of, again, as designers, we could improve significantly the environment and the sustainability goals. Reduction of the waste materials, providing green infrastructures. All of these are actually advancement or rely greatly on advancements of technology, materials that can be sort of readily available, yet they are assembled and used for the prime reason that they can sort of alleviate the use of more traditional, or the need for some more traditional materials which weren't at all environmentally friendly. So there's a whole sort of range of employment of technology that is helping us in creating smarter buildings in the region.
Are you working with AI as well in your design processes?
Yes, very much so. As a studio, we work, which obviously we try to stay friendly with development, advanced technique, how a building is perceived at this digital level, because there's a whole bunch of debates that goes on before a site is actually occupied. Now, we use many tools to convey our message to the marketplace, to the clients, etc. For instance, we use, particularly here in our studio, we use virtual reality, because complex spaces cannot necessarily be imagined easily by people who are not visually sort of aware or visually trained. So what we do, we create sort of these simulated spaces whereby sort of putting the right goggles, the clients can go inside a big space and see what they're getting. That's been a very important and very useful tool for us. But AI, we increasingly are bringing it in. At the moment, I am a little bit skeptical because it can promise a lot and raise expectations, but in reality, some of those in actual executing the designs again in a sustainable way, it's not sort of so easy. So again, in architecture, we are not building stage sets. We are not in some sort of sci-fi movie. It's not about smoke and mirrors. It's not about creating a perception which is essentially immediate, two-dimensional, here, now, and gone tomorrow. Buildings and cities and things stay a lifetime and beyond, sometimes hundreds of years. So to actually have a sensible sort of solution, the complexity goes beyond creating a visually impactful sort of moment. It's so for that, again, we need to be careful that we don't over dramatize design and architectural incidences.
That's a wonderful finish, actually. If people want to follow your work or find you, where can they find you?
We've got I think we have an Instagram. Nowadays people rely on Instagram. We have our website, LWKP website. We have an Instagram. I think it's LWK, and I myself try to sort of simplify and show some highlights in my own personal site, which is Salehi_Kourosh on Instagram. Which occasionally I put some notes and diaries of a life of what it's like to be an architect.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'll definitely tag you and put all the links in the description so that people can follow your work and your thoughts.
Thank you very much, and I've enjoyed it. I hope it's been useful.
A huge thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to the podcast to support me and so you don't miss an episode. And while you're there, I'd also be so grateful if you could rate and review us. If you have any guest suggestions or any feedback, you can find me on the socials @LadinaShipf. Thanks.